I want to do a mini life course on your book and some of the things that you teach people. One of the things you talk about is freedom. And I think a lot of times people are trying to find their freedom right now, right? Freedom in what they do, freedom in what fulfills them, and the more financial freedom they have, the more they can do kind of what's on their bucket freedom list. In many cases, not all. And so, what are three ways that people can, save, look at money, approach money to get one step closer to financial freedom? What would three tips be for people as they're, getting their paychecks and things of that nature?
Yeah, John, I really love this topic, right? It's really investor psychology. And they throw around this buzzword all the time, right? Financial freedom, right? We got to get to financial freedom. And they show a picture of, a couple who's 65 sitting on the beach, right? Drinking margaritas, and, life is great then, right? But that might not necessarily mean freedom to you, right? So I really love to have people think about, and this is a great question that the audience can just kind of think about, is if you had $1 billion today, what would you be doing? Where would you be? And who would you be with? Right.
Yeah.
And really, when you start to unpack wealth, we're always scrambling for, what's the highest yield that we could get. We've got to grow our wealth. Right. But let's go a little bit deeper. Right. What does that really mean to you? And most entrepreneurs are actually driven by Dan Sullivan's 4 freedoms, right? Which is having freedom of purpose. Number one, to wake up every day and be fascinated and motivated by the work you're doing. Number two, we want freedom of time, right? To be able to be working, when we want, right? And we also want freedom of relationships. We want to choose our partners. We want to choose our customers, right? And be surrounded by like-minded people, right? That inspire us. And that's how we want to spend our time. And then, of course, having freedom of money, right? Which allows you to always create a future that's bigger than your past, right? So I think in the essence of it, it's really what we're looking for, especially if you're an entrepreneur. It's about creating these freedoms in your life. And then what can you do, to make chess moves on your board to get closer to that?
Yeah. And then what would you say, maybe, how much of somebody's paycheck should be in their 401k? How much should they be investing? How should they be looking at money in that way?
John, I sold everything in my 401k about 8 years. Okay. And here's the thing, right? This is classic, is of course it's taboo to sell your 401k. No one would ever think to do that. Because why? Because there's a 10% penalty. But we've actually built for investors to get some clarity on what this means to you and how you can actually optimize your hard-earned capital, which is a 401k exit calculator. So let's just say you had 100K in your 401k, you paid the 10% penalty, and you paid 35% in taxes that year. So you have a net investable 55K. If I take that 55K and actually invest it in some of the assets that we're talking about, in, let's say, an apartment building that's providing tax efficient cash flow, it's compounding at about a rate of 20% annualized a year, right? And if I run that out over 20 years, that 55K grows to over $2 million.
Yeah.
Now, guess what? Leaving that, if I compare that, John, to leaving that 100K in my 401k, what does it do for me at the end of 20 years? It's actually just over 250K. It's all you're going to have. And by the way, that's before taxes, fees, and inflation. So you make your own assumptions, right? But plug in the numbers, and I encourage people to really start to do the math and look at the scenarios that you have available to you. Because when you see that kind of equation, you can make some conservative assumptions, but which side would you rather be on?
Right. Educate yourself so you can make decisions. What I'm hearing you say is like educate so you can empower yourself, you know, and make decisions for yourself, not necessarily only relying on, you know, one person.